Good morning. My name is Marcia Troup. I work with the Christian Education Ministry team and I help with the praise team and a few other things around here. Today I want to share with you a God story from our past. It happened to my husband. Actually, two God stories. So as many of you know, Don has back troubles. He's had them most of his life. Before I tell you the God story, I'd like to fill you in on his background. When Don was 15 years old, he was in a bad accident involving the car he was in and a semi. He was in the front passenger seat, and upon impact, he fell out the door onto the pavement. They dragged him out of the intersection, to keep him safe. He had a double skull fracture and a concussion. He ended up in the hospital for many months, part of the time in a coma. We believe that moving him out of the intersection was the beginning of his back troubles. He had many other injuries along the way, so in the early 70s it was hard for him to get a job due to the condition of his back. The question about the condition of a back was always on the front page of the job application. They would not hire people with pre-existing back issues, even if they signed an affidavit that they would not sue over any injuries on the job. So, Don and I decided to purchase an economy tractor with attachments. It looked kind of like a Kubota, but it was a cheaper model. And a small tractor to haul it on for him to be self-employed. He had what his doctor called a floating vertebrae. Any aggravation, one would pop out of place. And most of the time the doctor could pop them back in for him. But he spent many times in the hospital in traction because of that. So Don had a cement block that he used to hold the tongue of that trailer, and the tractor was on the trailer when he was not using it. He would move it from the block to the trailer hitch and back and forth with his small Toyota pickup. He did this many times with no problems. One morning he was getting ready to go on a job and was moving the tongue to the hitch. It just so happened that day the tractor was in gear and rolled forward. So there he was in a bent over position holding all that weight. He ended up on all fours facing the ground. I was in the house preparing for work. His yelling for help just went straight toward the ground and I did not hear him. At that time, a friend named Paul drove into the driveway and found Don in distress. The next thing I knew, there was a knock on the door. It was Paul telling me to call an ambulance for Don. In those days, you didn't call 911 for an ambulance. Companies ran ambulance service as a side business. So I called Warner Funeral Home for help. Don had pulled all of his ligaments loose from above his waist to his knees. The doctor told him to do nothing for the next 6 months. At the end of that time, the doctor said maybe you should have said a year, but anyway. So what's the God story here? Why did Paul come to our house that morning? It was not something he had done before. He lived in the Dunlap area, and we were in the Osceola locale. We believe God sent him. What else could it be? God knew that Don needed someone to rescue him. Well, we didn't pay that ambulance bill right away because we were waiting to see what insurance was going to pay. When I finally went down to Warner's to pay the bill, they said, "The bill has already been paid." When I asked him who paid it, they said, "We can't tell you. We're not allowed to tell you." So this is the second part of the God story. Who paid that bill? Might it have been Paul? We don't know. We never found out. We just praise God for reaching out to help us not once, but twice in that accident that Don had. And that's my two God stories for Don.